What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel for our next Heroes Guide. Today we're doing Han Solo, and it had been a while since I had played as Han Solo, so I got a little bit of extra gameplay for this one, just so I could be sure I was making the right recommendations for which cards to pick as Han Solo. And I was a little bit sad, if I'm being honest, that he hadn't been tweaked a little bit more since the last time I had played as him, because there's really only about 4-star cards that you should even consider when playing as Han Solo. So without any more delay, let's get right on into the video. Well, I actually want to start with the star card, the 4th one that I recommend using. However, if you can, use the other ones. This is just one where if you're good at aiming, like, you can hit headshots no problem. Almost every single person you're killing is a headshot kill. Go with this card because it's quite honestly going to help you big time, because Han Solo's best ability is actually his blaster. Right after that, it's Detonite Charge. Then I'd say Shoulder Charge, and then after that, it would be his Sharpshooter ability. But his blaster does so much damage, and if you hit headshots, you're getting insta-kills left and right, and you're getting tons of health and just dealing with enemies right then and there. So it's very worthwhile if you can hit headshots to have this specific star card. However, if you're like most players that I see in Battlefront and can't aim, don't worry, I'm one of them. I don't have the best aim. I don't have the worst aim, but I mean, you'll see in these clips that I'm missing tons of hits that seem like easy kills. It's just, it's a different game, and it's tough to learn the mechanics of all these games when there's so many out there. But the other star cards might be for you, the ones that I personally use all the time. I'm not someone who uses that headshot card too often. So that first card that I use of the 3 is Sharpshooter's Calm, and that one just allows me to fire his Sharpshooter ability more frequently, because each shot is taking less of his effective time away for Sharpshooter. I think the default time that you can fire that thing is like 3 or 4 seconds, so if you fire it for a few seconds, you're gonna run out really fast of that rapid fire mode that he has. And I don't think that's one of his best abilities, just because he's got so many good ones. His blaster is already ridiculously good. His Detonite Charge, crazy if you know how to use it right. His Shoulder Charge gets you out of a lot of tough situations, and it carries across multiple different enemies. He's just all around a very well made hero. So that's why I've got this one in there, because one of the only things I don't like about him is how fast that ability will disappear if you're shooting. If you're not shooting and you're just aiming at enemies getting ready to shoot, it doesn't disappear all that fast. It's nice to have that extra time when you're firing. Now, this Airburst card is just one that I cannot live without. I choose that over its alternative star card, which, if you throw it and you detonate it before it attaches to a surface, you get 25% bonus damage. That's crazy, because it already does ridiculous amounts of damage. The other one that it's got for the Detonite Charge is you throw it on a surface and you let it sit for 5 seconds, then you detonate it, and it does even more damage than it normally does. The only problem I have with this is a very fast-paced game, and you're not usually staying in one place for too long. The only time that card might be useful is in like a Heroes versus Villains game mode, but even then, I still prefer the Airburst, because if you let it sit there for 5 seconds before you detonate it, it's not recharging. It does not start recharging until it detonates. So once you've detonated it, it starts to recharge, and then you'll have that ability to use faster again. You'll notice in these clips that when I throw it, it's got that little waiting symbol on the ability, and then it will not start renewing until it has blown up. So it is a very useful thing to be able to just blow it up in midair and get that bonus damage in just about any situation. So that is a must-have. Heavily Modified Blaster is another one that I think is just a must-have. You shouldn't really take it off for any reason. If you're going to take anything off, take off that Sharpshooter ability and swap it out for the Headshot one. But Heavily Modified Blaster, since his blaster is pretty much the best thing about him and the amount of damage it does, you're going to want to be able to fire that thing for as long as humanly possible. So to me, this card is just a no-brainer. It allows you to survive and get kill streaks with him a lot easier than I think really any of the other cards that he's got. other than maybe the airburst card, because I mean, I'll just get stupid amounts of kills with airburst. But I also play in areas that are usually highly contested with opponents. I don't usually take opponents on one at a time. I usually try and go for several. But that is because I've been playing the game for a long time, and I just understand how the mechanics of the game work, and then I understand the strategy behind it all. So it's easier for me to stay alive, but that might not be the best thing for you. That's why I make these videos as more of a suggestion. So for me, that heavily modified blaster is a must-have, but go ahead and play around and see what works with you. So this next card is Sharpshooting Frenzy. It's very similar to the sharpshooter that I already recommend you have, except if you get a kill, it will extend sharpshooting's duration. So for me, I don't usually use sharpshooter to get lots of kills. I really do think it will disappear so fast from you just shooting while using it. So for me, I enjoy the one where it extends it just period. Like for me, shooting around, even if I'm not killing someone, I'm damaging opponents. I like that one because it kind of crosses from not just trooper-based game modes, but also heroes versus villains. Like if you're unloading an evader, odds are you're not going to kill him with that ability. You're going to damage him pretty heavily, but then that ability is going to go away because it didn't use its purpose. Like the star card did not get you any additional time because you're not going to kill villains as frequently as you would be killing troopers. So that's one that I definitely, like, if you're going to use, I'd probably stay away from the heroes versus villains game modes. But if it is a trooper-based game mode, I could see you possibly doing well with that one. It's just not one that I prefer over the other sharpshooting one, which just extends the duration per shot fired, if that makes sense. So, again, these videos are just recommendations, do as you please, but that's what my experience is with the game so far. Smugglers' Wits is another one that I see a lot of users using, and they seem to be very good with using Han Solo, so maybe they know something I don't. I personally have never really liked this card too much because I don't like the fact that it takes longer for his abilities to recharge if you were to put this on. I do like that you get extra dodges and you can roll more frequently. However, that waiting longer for his abilities is just, that's not something I enjoy, because his air burst, his little detonite charge, that thing, ridiculously good. Sharpshooter, it's a good enough ability to where I wouldn't want it to take longer to recharge, and then his shoulder charge is just, I think it's a little broken because of how much damage it'll do to heroes if they don't block it. And the fact that it splashes across multiple enemies if they're close enough to one another is just absolutely outstanding. So I want those abilities to be ready to use as frequently as possible, and if I'm putting this card on, it's not going to happen near as often as if I didn't have this card on. So that's my reason for not using it, but it is there, and it is a reliable option for a lot of people. So if that's something you want to try out, you're more than welcome. So now that I've kind of talked about all the star cards that I would even recommend looking at or using, I kind of wanted to go through and just talk about things I've noticed while playing as Han Solo. So he is low on health. He has 650 health, which isn't a ton, but it's also not a small amount, especially with how quickly he can get kills and gain all that health back. But when you have players that you could be going up against, like Darth Vader with a specific star card that could have potentially up to 950 health, that's something to think about. That's 950 versus 650. That is a solid difference. 300 health is something to be concerned about. So if you're Han Solo, you need to take that into account, especially in a, I'd say a trooper-based game mode where you got tons of enemies surrounding you. You've got heavies with 200 health, and you've got officer, assault, and specialist with 150 health. You've got enforcers that have anywhere from, 180 to, or no, whoa, that's way off, 220 to 420 or somewhere along those lines. They've got a lot of health that you've got to burn through, so it's something to think about where the extra dodge card might become worth it because you can roll out of the way of some of their deadlier attacks, or the air burst may become very useful in these tight corridor type maps, kind of like I'm on now, Death Star, where you can throw a detonite charge down a hallway, and before it sticks to anything, you blow it up, and bam, you've got 5 kills because of all the enemies being confined in that little area. You've also got to think about, you've got to play with your teammates to be an effective Han Solo, because if you're by yourself, all these enemies are looking at you, and they've only got one thing to shoot at, and that's you. With 650 health, you're not going to last very long. But if it's you in a crowd full of your friendlies, they've got you to think about, they've got all your friendlies, they've got maybe a Leia, a Lando, a Luke, someone nearby other than you to possibly shoot at. And if it's Luke, for example, they're much more concerned with him, because he can block their blaster shots, and then he can run at them and just slice them up, no problem. Whereas you can only maybe shoot them from a distance, or you've got your detonite charge. There's just a lot of factors to consider. So he's a very, I guess, situational hero is the best way to put it. You've got to learn how to use his abilities in the right settings. So he can shoot long range, which is definitely a pro for heroes. And with his damage for his blaster, it's definitely worth using him. You hit a headshot on an assault character, and that person is dead immediately. If you use shoulder charge on, I think it's all of the base classes, even heavy, they're going to die instantly. So that's another good way to get health back if you've lost a solid chunk. Another nice thing about Han is he's very, I guess, diverse is a good way to put it. Like, he doesn't struggle in trooper-based game modes. He doesn't struggle in heroes-based game modes. He's good at attacking villains, and he's good at attacking troopers. You just need to figure out how you play with him. Do you kind of sit back behind your team and let them take all the damage, or are you up there in the front, still close to your team, just maybe you're soaking up that damage and then gaining that health back by getting those kills? It's something you've got to figure out when you start playing with him. So there's not really a quirky pro tip or anything that I could tell you that would really boost the way that you play as Han. Just realize that you don't have a whole lot of health to mess around with. So if you start taking a lot of damage, you might want to back up, wait for your airburst to recharge, and then go into like that hallway where I just blew them up. That would be a perfect opportunity. You saw my health went way up. I think I was in the upper 200s, and now I'm at 400. That is not bad at all. Use your abilities to your advantage. They are going to save your life more than you would think, especially with Han Solo. I can't really think of any other good tips at the moment. I'm sure there's probably one or two that I've left out. If you do have any questions, or you think I've left anything out of this video, let me know in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to respond in a pretty good amount of time. I do hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, smack that like button and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And then also let me know what you want me to do next. If you want me to do Iden Versio next, or you want to see Darth Maul, just let me know what y'all want to see next in this series of guides, and I'll do my best to do those next. Anyways, I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.